Can you see that? Okay, great. All right. So I have covered a little bit of this content already, but as I mentioned, we are partners with the International Olympic Committee, cover Olympic sports. Here's a great. I love this slide because it tells the story of the previous host cities of the games. So as I mentioned, we started here in 1981 in Santa Clara, California, and that's the last time this event has been in the United States. So you can see some of these other host cities are major international destinations, whether it's Duisburg, Germany, London, the Netherlands. I mean, these are major destinations. So for Birmingham to be on the same page as some of these international destinations to be hosting this competition is a really big deal globally, and will the impact in visibility for the city of Birmingham as a destination will be immense. And I know our friends at the CVB will probably chime in and love to talk about that a little bit more too. So as I mentioned, wanted to just talk through a little bit about some of the details around the Birmingham 2022 games. As I mentioned, 3,600 athletes, if not more, from more than 100 countries around the world. For this group, I know you will understand the challenge I have ahead of me with having 1,500 plus media from around the world covering this event. The fun thing about this is that the World Games 2022 will be over an 11-day period. So as this slide represents, we kick off on July 7th with a traditional opening ceremony, the likes of which you would see at the Olympic Games, with a parade of athletes, with some celebrities, with music and entertainment. And it's really the introduction of Birmingham to the world is how we're looking at it. And there's some really exciting things planned on that. The location of that is to be announced later this year, that particular event. But we've got some really big plans, and it's safe to say there will be tens of thousands of people in attendance at that. So our hope is that that will, again, really be the introduction of Birmingham to the world. And then over the course of the next 11 days, so July 7th through 17th, we'll have competitions at more than 25 different venues around the city of Birmingham. So this is not just going to be isolated to your traditional venues like the Crossplex, like the BJCC, like Legion Field. There will be 25 plus venues around the city that will be hosting competitions. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in some later slides, but some of them are designed to be incredibly unique. Like beach handball is one of our sports, and competitive climbing, sport climbing is one of our sports. And the plan, top secret for this group, but the plan is that we are actually going to build out the competition venue for those two sports at Sloss Furnaces. So that's probably one that I'm the most excited about, again, between this group, just because it's going to be such a massive public party, spectacle, celebration of sport. So that's going to be very, very cool. And it will be throughout the entire footprint of the city of Birmingham. And then, of course, after the 11 days of competition, we'll have the traditional closing ceremony that you might see at the Olympics or any major international multi-sport event. So we're very excited about all of not just the competitions, but the ancillary events that will be included along with it. Again, here are a few more little just facts and figures as it relates to the games. This first one is one that is really important to us, and I don't see any of our friends from Lakeshore on here, but in partnership with the Lakeshore Foundation, Birmingham as host city actually added wheelchair rugby to the lineup of sports for the World Games 2022. And what that means and why that's important is that this is the first time an adapted sport will be included in either Olympic or World Games history. Most people think of the Olympics and the Paralympics, right, as two separate events, but this is the first time wheelchair rugby as an adapted sport will be part of the games. And Lakeshore has been a wonderful partner to us, and it's been a great opportunity to really tell the story of Lakeshore and what they do, but also the importance of inclusion and adapted sports, and really, frankly, adapted adapted access throughout the games entirely. So that's a really big deal. As we've seen, and as I mentioned, a couple more numbers, facts and figures here, we're estimating across those 11 days between opening ceremony, closing ceremony, those 25 venues, of 500,000 people coming in and out attending these events. So again, when you think about the impact and the visibility for the city of Birmingham, that's a big deal, and that's an impressive number. And I know I mentioned already the estimated economic impact of that $256 million number. That, again, I think our friends at the CVB would appreciate. You know, that is from hotel rooms, that is from people infusing money into the local economy through shopping, hotels, dining, basically their entire experience while they're here in Birmingham. And just to give you all some insight on comparison, for comparison purposes, $256 million in economic impact is similar to something like the Super Bowl. Something like the Final Four. I will tell you from my history, as Jake mentioned, with the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl in Atlanta, you know, that's a game day with a week long of events leading up to it, and generally that was clocking in at about between 30 and 40 million in economic impact. So that speaks to the scale and scope of how big of an impact that is financially. And then again, as I mentioned, we're looking at this as the biggest international event in the Southeast since the 1996 Olympics, and presumably the largest in Birmingham in history. So again, cannot reiterate or emphasize enough how big of a deal this is. So obviously broadcast is a really big deal and another really exciting part of this. And I know folks on this call will be interested in this since this is what we all do for a living, but the broadcast of this is going to be on an international scale also. So we'll have global distribution through International Sports Broadcasting, who is based out of Madrid and who also handles the Olympics. So that's a very big deal. And then here locally in the United States, our broadcast partner will be NBC Sports. So again, that's going to give us the opportunity to broadcast and to highlight Birmingham and showcase Birmingham, not just to a small local audience or the people who are on site, but people quite literally across the world. And just for comparison's sake, the 2017, which was the last edition of the World Games, they estimate that audience was about 100 million people, 100 million viewers around the world. And those games were in Poland. So, you know, all signs point to us probably eclipsing that number, which is even more exciting. So I referenced this earlier, alluded to it, and, you know, I know that this is a long list and a lot of copy, but this is just, I wanted to share just an overview of the sports of the World Games at this juncture. As I mentioned, there is the possibility that we may be adding a sport or two along the way in the coming months, but this just gives you a sense of the different categories of sports and what we're looking at. Again, some of these are a little more unique, like orienteering, like drone racing, things like tug of war. I think I'm probably, if I'm being honest, the most excited about two. Softball, because I was a former softball player, and we're going to get to see the U.S. women's team compete here in Birmingham, which is a big deal. And then sumo wrestling, because how fascinating is it going to be to get to see real sumo wrestling in person and live. But you can see, again, there's just a large representation of a number of different sports from all over the world. And that's really, really neat too, because there's some of these that have massive popularity in other countries, such as korfball, such as boules sports. They're very popular in Europe, but there's not a lot of awareness here in Birmingham or in America for some of these. And I'll tell you too, some of you may have seen, I'm spoiling myself a little bit here because I'll talk about it later, but some of you may have seen 2 weeks ago, we made the announcement that we added flag football to the program of sports, which is a really, really exciting addition because we believe that that is regionally very relevant to the games being in Birmingham. And as we've seen, the awareness and understanding of what they call American football in Europe and across the other parts of the world it's not as prevalent, and there's not as much awareness around that. So we tried to come up with a program of sports that we felt very much represented not just the world but the Birmingham community. So these are all very exciting, and I'm happy to share any information. I'm happy to share any more information about any of those individual sports or talk more offline about them, but a really exciting and unique lineup. So you'll see here, and I referenced this earlier, I just wanted to give a sampling or a taste of some of the proposed event sites. We will actually be making venue announcements throughout the remainder of the year in the coming months. And so like I said, these are proposed at this point, but this is just a sampling, but all in, we will have more than 25 venues across the entire city. So this is just a couple of them, some of the more expected and unique ones as well. So let's see. All right. So as I've mentioned, this is a big undertaking, and we could not do this without our partners. And I'm so glad, like I said, that our friends from the CVB are on the call, because they have stepped up from the very beginning and taken a very active role in not just supporting these games, but being a part of the planning and also promoting. So these are some of our local partners here. The city of Birmingham, Jefferson County, Alabama has stepped up, and of course, as I mentioned, the CVB. So we're really grateful for that. And frankly, it's an all hands on deck effort on behalf of the city of Birmingham. Equally as important is our corporate sponsorship. As we all know, those dollars are really what helps make these things, make an event like this successful. So you can see here some representation of some of the folks that have jumped on board and are supporting this event. A lot of local interest and local support behind it from our friends at Alabama Power and Shipt and Regions. And we've really been able to have some fun with what we call their signature assets. So for example, and this is a great segue into the first bullet point here, for example, Shipt, as a sponsor of the World Games, the signature asset that we have developed for them at the World Games is the World Games 2022 experience delivered by Shipt, which you may have seen out and about around town, I guess pre-COVID at events, but it's basically a mobile marketing unit is what we call it, that is branded for the World Games 2022, has some experiential engaging elements to it where fans can come and try sports of the World Games or modified sports of the World Games. Probably the most popular is the big sumo wrestling suits that you can put on and compete in sumo wrestling out in front of there. But it's just an opportunity to further tell the story. You know, some of our other partners will have sponsored rights to things like the opening ceremony, the closing ceremony, things like that. So that's been kind of a fun challenge and a good opportunity to really engage our sponsors. So looking ahead, and I call this building our story, because as I'm sure you all can imagine, the challenge for us is that planning and execution for the World Games really started, the games were awarded, you know, more than 5 years ago at this point, 2015. So really planning and execution started a long time ago. And again, as I'm sure you can all understand and relate to, it can be a challenge to market, communicate, promote an event that is 5 years away, that is 4 years away, that is 3 years away. And then of course this year we had to postpone, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but we had to postpone because of COVID and push to 2022. So, you know, the mind of the consumer is not always thinking 4 years, 5 years out. They're thinking, oh my gosh, what's happening in a month, in 6 months. So we had an interesting challenge in front of us to try to build momentum and build excitement around this event when people were kind of saying, oh, that's a long time in the future. We've got other things on our mind for now. So part of building our story was creating these assets that could be used to tell the story, creating programs that could be used to tell the story. So this is just a representative set of a few of those. I've already mentioned the World Games experience, which is that mobile marketing unit. One really exciting one we call the World of Opportunity. So this is a program that not only allows us to build a narrative, but also engage the community, and specifically business community. So World of Opportunity is a supplier diversity program, much like the NFL does for the Super Bowl each year, much like some of these major events around the country do. And essentially what that is an opportunity to connect local minority small business owners with business opportunities to provide goods and services in support of the World Games. So to simplify that, it's basically a program designed to make sure that these business opportunities are stay here in Birmingham as much as possible, and that beyond that $256 million in economic impact, that the businesses here in Birmingham, specifically those small, diverse businesses, have an opportunity to feel the economic impact of this. So that's a very cool program, a very impactful program that launched last year. And we currently are building what we call the Supplier Diversity Database, the World of Opportunity Database, where small local minority businesses can register their business in there. And then whenever there is an RFP or a need for any sort of goods or services, a notification goes out to that entire system. So to date, we have more than 900 small local minority businesses registered in that World of Opportunity database, which is really exciting and really representative of the city, and is also going to allow us again to share that love. Beyond that, what's exciting is that that World of Opportunity database at the conclusion of the World Games will be gifted to the city of Birmingham, so that for future events, the city of Birmingham, other events can utilize that and then continue to support these small, local, diverse businesses. So that's another one. The education program, you may have seen a little bit about this. This was an opportunity and a program that was created by the World Games to engage our youth, to engage our students. And so there have been some initiatives around that, but what is currently happening there is that we are in the process of building a curriculum around the World Games that will be shared and integrated into Birmingham City Schools to, again, help tell the story. And we did a very cool kickoff event at Glen Iris Elementary again last year that I would encourage you to check into, because it's just really neat to see how these particularly elementary school level children just get so excited about the sports of the World Games and the culture of the 100+ different countries that are going to be a part of it. So again, that was another program that we created as an opportunity to tell our story and engage the community. One that you'll hear a little bit more about in the months to come is a sustainability program, because again, the goal here is for this to be an impactful event for the city of Birmingham, and what better way than to encourage sustainability. And something interesting that we discovered early on is that across the footprint of our 25 venues, there is not one consistent sustainability plan or sustainability tactical approach. So some of those 25 venues don't even have recycling programs. So quite literally, we will be able to step in, create some program, create some outlines and guidelines that will not only be able to help give back to the Birmingham community, but also establish some things that can hopefully have some longevity here in the community. You know, one interesting little tidbit that we like to talk about with sustainability is, you know, because of, and I don't want to get too far in the weeds, but because of doping regulations around this event, you know, on site at the venues, you can't have fountains. So you can't have athletes taking a cup and getting water from a fountain. Instead, they'll have to utilize bottled water. So imagine, just imagine how many bottles of water will ultimately be used by 3,600 athletes over 11 days across 25 venues. And so you can see where the need for a sustainability and or recycling program is going to be important. And even beyond that, the World Games is responsible for setting up and providing housing and food for all of the competing athletes. So they will be housed and fed at UAB and some of the local universities. But what that means is that we are likewise responsible for outfitting those rooms. So, you know, the shower curtains in the showers, the bedding, the trash cans, all of the things that they will need in their rooms will be utilized for 11 days, but then what happens to them after that 11 days? What happens to those items? So really starting to think through the impact of all of those items, and again, how we can give back to the Birmingham community. And so again, in the name of building our story and building our narrative, another exciting thing that we've been working on is our mascot program. So we did announce, I'm not saying anything that's spoiling, we did announce last summer that everybody's best friend, and it sounds like you all are familiar based on your meetings, Mr. Vulcan, or V as they call him, will actually be the official mascot of the World Games 2022. So we do have a costume that is V that has been adapted just a smidge to be a little more approachable, if you will. And we have some costumes that are uniforms that are sports of the world game, that represent sports of the world games. And so I think once we get through COVID and start having some more public appearances, y'all will get the opportunity to start to see everybody's best friend V out in the community helping spread the good word about the world games. So we're excited about that. And who better to represent the games in the city of Birmingham. So that's just a glimpse of, like I said, starting to build that narrative, build that cadence, build that story. So then I wanted to shift into telling our story. So again, when we've got 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years leading up into the games, we have to be really deliberate and intentional with making sure we have a cadence of stories and narrative and content that's going out there on a regular basis. We like to call it the drumbeat to the games. And so I just wanted to share a couple things. A lot of you may have seen some of this recent news. In April, of course, we did have to postpone the World Games to 2022, which at the end of the day, I think it turned out to be ultimately a good decision. It gives us more time to plan, more time to execute. And frankly, there was not an option to do otherwise once the Olympic Games moved to 2021. So we're all very excited about that and have really, it's really been a positive, optimistic change. I will say on here, new name. This was as marketers and communicators, you can probably understand our challenge here. There was a lot of discussion around, do we remain the World Games 2021 or do we shift to 2022? And while that may seem obvious, a lot of you are probably aware the Olympics did not change. They are still Tokyo Olympics and referring to themselves as 2020. Just because that was the original name. So we had a lot of conversation around that and ultimately decided that for marketing purposes, it absolutely made the most sense to go ahead and update the name to 2022. So our official name, if you see us, if you want to refer to us, is the World Games 2022 Birmingham. Henceforth forevermore. And that of course also involved then updating all of our website, our email addresses, our social channels, things like that. But it all has been very, very positive and given us some good momentum. This was a big one, and all of our Auburn fans on the call and local Birmingham folks, I think, will appreciate and hopefully saw that we 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, were able to announce and excited to announce that Sir Charles Barkley has agreed to be in what we're calling an honorary co-chair for the World Games 2022, which means he will serve in kind of a promotional capacity. He will be on site during the games and participating in opening ceremony and some events like that. So what that does is that gives us that is a global personality who has the Olympic experience, who can speak to the impact of events of this magnitude. And again, just for this group, I can share with you that we are also going after, I'll keep it very vague, but we're going after 3 additional celebrities who represent different sectors of business, who are known global icons with Alabama roots, and we'll just leave it at that. But we are hoping to have some announcements about additional big name co-chairs to jump on board in the coming months, which we're really excited about. And then most recently, of course, and I referenced this earlier, we had the announcement 2 weeks ago that we added flag football to the lineup of sports. That in and of itself was very exciting because that's a great, great, great sport. That speaks to the regionality of especially the Southeast, and it represents the United States. But even more exciting for us is that the NFL came on board to be the presenting sponsor of flag football at the World Games 2022. So again, all of you as marketers, advertisers, communicators can understand that having a name and a brand with the global recognition of the shield, as we call it, so the NFL, really is quite literally, no pun intended, a game changer for us. And furthermore, when we made the announcement, the global visibility that being associated with their brand gave us was second to none. We were able to get our CEO on air on the NFL Network, doing a couple interviews. We were able to secure some coverage in Forbes. Really, it led to, again, that association led to international coverage, which is a very big deal. And our hope is that potentially we can look to expand to some other professional sports leagues to tie into the World Games. Who knows, maybe we can get the NHL on board to help support floorball, since that's one of the sports. So again, really that was just a big deal and something that's going to prove to be very beneficial to us from a brand perspective along the way. And then I know I probably could not have kept it any more vague on upcoming news, but that was intentional. I can give you guys some spoilers, but not too many. But just some upcoming news as we look to the months ahead. Our big categories are that we are continuing to add sponsors of a significant level. So we'll have some really exciting sponsor news coming up in the coming months. We will, as I mentioned, roll out the official announcements of these venues, all 25 of them, and the sports that will be played at each one in the schedule, as well as just some, again, I know, but this is very vague, but just some additional fun programs and some things much like the mobile marketing unit that I mentioned, much like Vulcan being the sponsor. So some other little programs like that that'll just be really exciting, we believe, for the Birmingham community. So keep your eyes peeled for some things like that. So then looking ahead, some of the things that I can talk about in terms of programming and things we have in our future that are really exciting and I want to make sure everybody's aware of are, we will launch a merchandise program that will actually take place and be available to the public starting later this year, where we'll have an online store and, you know, fans from around the world, athletes from around the world can order Birmingham 2022 gear, much like this shirt that I intentionally wore to represent the brand. So we're very excited about launching that. And this is where it gets interesting for y'all. Of course, volunteers are going to be instrumental in making this event happen. We anticipate needing approximately 2,000 volunteers to help with different roles and responsibilities around the games. Myself in particular, as the director of communications, I will need media operations volunteers. So I'll need folks to help me in what we'll call the main media center, to help work with the media. I will need media volunteers at every one of those 25 venues to work with the media when they're on site covering the competitions. So we're really, really excited that we will be officially launching the volunteer program and be available for registration spring of next year. Now, what I will say, and I'll provide one caveat here, is that if there's anybody on this call that is interested in being a volunteer or even being a volunteer specifically to help with some of the stuff I mentioned with media, or our marketing team will no doubt need some people to be content capturers along the way. Please do not hesitate to reach out to me. We also have a sign up form on the website under volunteers where you can sign up, notate what your area of interest is, and then you'll be alerted once the system goes live. So I would encourage you, if anybody has any interest, we would love to have people that know what they're doing in this business involved. So please do, like I said, reach out to me or go ahead and sign up for notification when that becomes available. We are also hard at work on the World Games 2022 app, mobile app, and are going to be looking to roll that out sometime in the next 6 to 12 months, depending on timing. It's pretty close to being done right now, but obviously more content is being released and made available along the way. So that's going to be really exciting and a great way for both fans and athletes who are here from around the world to get information on Birmingham, information on results, things that are happening along the way during that 11-day period. One really exciting one, and I promise guys, this is slide 15 of 16, so then I'm gonna stop talking and let y'all ask questions. But another exciting thing about this is what we call preview events. So our plan as a means of again, telling the story of the World Games to the Birmingham community, but also testing our resources, testing our processes, is going to be these preview events. So the idea is that we will take one of those or a couple of those 33 sports that are on the lineup and actually have what we're calling a preview event here in Birmingham in the sometime over the next 2 years leading up to the games. So again, it's meant to be a preview to what it'll be like at the World Games. So that's something really exciting. Those are not set in stone on the calendar yet. So unfortunately, I can't speak to when they will be or what the sports will be, but there are a few ideas being kicked around right now. So that'll be really exciting. And then, of course, as I mentioned, the World Games happens every 4 years after the Summer Olympics. And so, of course, we have, at least right now, knock on wood, the Tokyo Olympics happening next summer. And so that will give us a great opportunity to further promote the World Games, tell the story of international multi-sport events, and really generate some buzz and excitement around the Olympics. And then, of course, as I'm sure some of y'all have seen along the way over the past year or so, we have notated and really tried to build some momentum around 500 days out, 1,000 days out, things like that along the way, 1 year out. Now, of course, the great irony is that in February of this year, we had a 500-day celebration, but then when we postponed the games, we had to restart the clock. So it'll be a little bit of deja vu, and that we'll have 500 days again. We're at about 709, if my math is right. We're at about 709 days till the games are right now, but we'll have some of those countdown events. And then media partnerships. I wanted to share that particularly with this group because it's relevant, because what we've tried to do, again, to continue the cadence and the momentum and ongoing story, is develop these local media partnerships to tell the story on an ongoing basis. So a couple of the things we've got, and I know some folks on here are familiar with this, we've got something called World Games Wednesday that we do with WBRC, where every month they have guaranteed coverage where we get to promote a story, share a story with them and promote it for World Games Wednesday. And then another example is our good friends at WVTM, who's obviously the NBC affiliate, with the tie-in with NBC as the United States broadcast partner, have really jumped on board and stepped up in a big way to be a big partner of the games. And so again, they are actually doing the same thing, where their goal is to tell a story about the World Games 2022 once a week, and to continue that momentum and increase that momentum heading into 2022. So there's a couple more things we've got cooking up with them, but I just wanted to share some of that. So with that, I have done a lot of talking about the games, what has happened, what's to come, but would love to answer any other questions y'all have, touch on any subjects that maybe you may have some curiosity on. Again, our friends at the CVB, if there's anything I missed, I would love to hear from y'all as well. But yeah, I would open it up to you all. I am here to answer questions.
Hey, Jessica, thanks for all of that wonderful information. That was a lot, but I think I'm actually more excited for the World Games. I think my idea going into it was like there was going to be like 2 games of soccer and 1 of lacrosse, and that was it.
Yeah.
So, I'm gonna field the questions for you. I had a couple of my own just prepared.
Yeah.
I know you mentioned the shipped like pop-up kind of situation. Was there anything else that you guys had planned? I guess the equivalent I could think of was like the Amazon boxes that I can't remember who did those. Just as like promotional stuff, is there anything that you had planned that you had to cancel just because of COVID or anything? Something super fun?
Well, so some of it I don't necessarily want to spoil, because some of it may have been rescheduled because of COVID. Certainly that World Games experience is a big one, and as I'm sure everyone here saw, Shipt actually recently rebranded, and so even if you have seen the experience over the past 12 months, we'll actually be re-releasing that, because we basically rewrapped it to represent the new Shipt brand, and then also have changed up some of the activations around it a little bit. So we're really excited to share that. I don't want to sound too vague, Jake, but I don't also want to spoil some of the things that we may be cooking up.
Yeah.
So I will say, and I'll leave it at this, that doing some of those more experiential elements to engage the community is definitely a priority over the next 2 years. So the short answer is yes. The long answer is yes, but I'm not ready to spill specific details on what some of those might be yet.
I figured if you guys had anything planned, you just pushed it back and kept it as
well. And to that point, I will tell you that as a result of COVID, we actually We did press pause on some of the paid media elements just because there was a lot of uncertainty around around the timing and changing the date and around what our reality would look like, in terms of timing, in terms of execution. And so we did admittedly press pause on that for the time being, for the short term,
Right.
but are looking to re-engage here in the coming months.
Okay. Another question. This one's from Kathleen, and I'm going to kind of mix it with one of the questions I had because it's very similar. But how does working with the city of Birmingham compare to other cities, and what are the challenges and benefits? And then I wanted to follow that up with um, the previous cities. What were the benefits that were seen from the economic impact of this event on the previous cities?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. One thing I did not specify in the beginning, and I want to make this point, is the governing body of the World Games is the International World Games Association, the IWGA. So they are based in Europe. Actually, their staff is in multiple cities around the world, but based in Europe. One distinction between the Olympics and the World Games, one additional distinction, is that whereas I'm sure a number of you have seen that when a host city is granted the Olympics, is awarded the Olympics, there is a sizable lead up time associated with building out venues, building out structures. Look at Atlanta is a great example. I mean, they built Centennial Olympic Park, Turner Field, they built actual facilities to support the Olympic Games. One distinction is that for the IWGA to select a city, by and large, the infrastructure has to already be there. The thinking is that they will not select a city where the infrastructure does not already exist, with the goal being they don't want a city to have to build facilities to support the games, right? So I think that's an important distinction from an economic impact perspective and from a planning and execution perspective, is that we knew coming in that there were not going to be any expectations about, oh my gosh, we've got to build a soccer facility and a swimming facility. We have the opportunity and ability to use existing facilities and just maybe make some tweaks to build them out for the games specifically. So that's really important. So basically what it means is that, for example, Boutwell Auditorium, if that's one, we're going to be able to spend some time and effort to make that World Games ready, which may mean a little bit of some signage, maybe a fresh coat of paint, something like that, but we're not worrying about building new ones. So ultimately what that means for Birmingham is that there's going to be some improvements or enhancements to the existing facilities, which is a really cool benefit. So as it relates to Birmingham versus other cities, I was not on site at Poland, and so I can't necessarily speak to that. I think one thing that's really interesting is that the official language of the games is always the language of the host cities. So I think one thing that the IWGA is very excited about is that for the first time in a few editions, the official language of the World Games 2022 will be English.
Wow.
So that is definitely a benefit. I think they are excited too, because one thing that Birmingham, and even more broadly speaking, the United States brings to the table is the thinking and the concept behind corporate partnerships. I will tell you that in Poland, the government funded every bit of the games. There was not necessarily a corporate sponsorship element to it like there will be and like there has been in Birmingham. So that is something that was very, very appealing to the IWGA in making that decision. They also very much just appreciated, like I said, the existing infrastructure. They appreciated and a shout out to my CVB friends. They appreciated that Birmingham was a destination where, if somebody from Germany is coming to the United States for the first time to compete, there are offerings here that they will want to bring their family. They'll want to bring their friends, not just to experience the World Games, but experience Birmingham, experience the history, experience the attractions, experience the dining. So they were really impressed with that. one more thing, and I'll leave it at that with as it relates to Birmingham is as I referenced on one of these slides, the collaboration has been pretty amazing. Between the CVB, the city, Jefferson County, the state, just having the city council, having all of those entities have the ability to come to one table and sit around one table for what I always affectionately call Team Birmingham, to host these events and understand that it's about promoting Birmingham is amazing, and it's an amazing thing to be a part of, and is frankly something that couldn't happen in every city around the world. There's a lot of folks who have different agendas and different politics and different priorities, and so the fact that we as a community are able to set those aside is a differentiator, really and truly.
Yeah, I do think that Birmingham it feels like small town, big city kind of deal. Like everybody likes it and everybody is kind of in the know, and they always want their city to do well. Like you'll go to bigger cities and people will straight up hate on the city that they live in, but I don't feel like people do that for Birmingham. I feel like everybody comes together for a common goal, and this is a really big one.
That's right. And Jake, I will say furthermore, and I mean this as a positive thing, that we have seen a number of times, there's an element of positive surprise when folks come to Birmingham for the first time, whether, we had what we call a competition managers meeting, where representatives from each of the 33 sport federations came and did a site visit to Birmingham to see their facility, and to see what Birmingham had to offer. And for the vast majority of those folks who were coming in from international locations, this was their first time in Birmingham. And by and large, their reactions were so positive, and again, so positively surprised. Most of them said, "Oh my gosh, I had no idea. All I think of when I think about Birmingham is the civil rights movement," right? And so this is a great opportunity to really retell our story. I know it sounds so cliche and so cheesy, but it gets me so excited because it is literally our opportunity to tell the world our story and who we really are. Which is something that gets me really excited and frankly a little bit emotional, a little overwhelmed to think about being a part of that. So
yeah, that's awesome. All right, I think I have two more questions.
Yeah.
I know you were talking about like having to, like, the trash cans, like you guys are going to buy trash cans that they're going to use for 11 days and then they're going to go away. Do you guys have any plans for maybe setting up local leagues for like handball, or I saw one of the games was life-saving. I don't know how that is a game, but do you guys have plans to set up local leagues?
Yeah, so that's a great question, because the sports are just so fascinating. And I would encourage, as a side note, I would encourage you to spend some time. It's a deep rabbit hole that you can go down, but if you go on YouTube and look up some of these sports or Google some of these sports, watching the video footage or seeing the visuals of them are fascinating. We have a number of images and videos on our website at twg2022.com as well. I would definitely encourage you to check it out because it gets you excited. So in terms of actually setting up leagues though Jake, I don't see necessarily actual leagues being set up and facilitated by the Birmingham Organizing Committee. However, what we are working on doing is engaging existing groups and leagues. It was a surprise to me. Maybe I'm just naive to the orienteering community. But for example, there is a Birmingham Orienteering Club that is really, really active here, and they do a lot at Oak Mountain and at locations around the city. And so what we're efforting to do right now is engage with those groups that already exist and get them excited, get them involved, get them engaged. And hopefully ultimately what can happen is we can find ways for them to be a part of the games. I mean, I will tell you, one of the elements I didn't talk about with ancillary events is something called the World Games Plaza, which will be basically it'll be open throughout the entirety of the games. It's outside, it's free to visitors, and it's meant to be kind of an exhibition of the games. So there'll be some broadcast happening there. There will be sports and federations that have tents set up. There will be sponsors that have setups. And so we imagine that there will be an opportunity for some exhibitions from some of those groups as well, and some ways for them to get involved.
Oh, that's awesome. All right,
Yeah.
I got one more question. I didn't want to do too many COVID questions just because,
No,
it's
it's
just
okay.
kind of, uh,
It's an interesting adventure.
but with this time extension that COVID brought, were you guys able to complete some stuff that you guys were not sure you would get done?
Um, Look, the games are happening, and we always like to joke about that. Like it or not, they're barreling towards us.
Yeah.
So, but the short answer is yes. What we're excited about is that this will allow us to generate a little more corporate support, which we do still have money to raise. We do for the operations of the game. We've got a sizable multi-million-dollar budget. So it buys us a little more time to approach corporate sponsors and hit that goal. And then, yeah, it allows us to think a little bit bigger about some of these programs like NFL and adding flag football, like some of these honorary co-chairs, like some of those initiatives. So it did broaden that timeline, which I'll be honest with you, has frankly been a good thing for us thus far. So yeah, it has actually turned out to be somewhat of a positive thing. I know it's been hard for a lot of groups and a lot of individuals, and so I hate to sound like we're happy that it happened because we're certainly not.
Yeah.
But it's a good thing for this group. Again, for this group, I will share that one really exciting thing that we will have an announcement on to come is that initially it did not look like construction on Protective Stadium was going to be complete in time for the 2021 World Games. And that is probably one of the single most exciting things, is that now pushing it back a year means that we will be able to find a way to integrate Protective Stadium into the games. So that's a big deal.
Yeah, yeah, I know they've been working hard on that. All right, I think that's
Sorry,
it.
I've done a lot of talking, but
No,
if anybody has other follow-up questions, I am always available. And as you can tell, very excited to talk about the games and its impact on the city of Birmingham.
yeah, well, thank you for coming to speak. I'm going to throw it over to Lisa, I believe, to close us out.
Okay. Let's see. I know you can't see me talking right now, but here we go. Thank you everybody for joining us. That was really enlightening. And of course, I'm an Auburn fan, so I'm all over that Charles Barkley will be hosting this. So I will definitely be tuning in. And some of those sports are just, I'm really interested to find out what they're all about. So I'm excited about it. And thank you so much for giving this very informative presentation. So everyone out there, just remember we meet the fourth Wednesday of every month, So please be keying in for our next luncheon, virtual luncheon, and we will talk to you soon. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.